Please subscribe. It helps a lot.
The funeral ended in the same slow silence it had begun with. Thick air, bowed heads, and no wind to speak of. Hunter stood at the edge of the cemetery plot, surrounded by people he hadn't seen since he was 15, none of whom said his name. A cottonwood seed drifted past his ear, then another, and another. Before long, the sky swirled with white. It looked like snow. It always did. That was the trick of this town, making things beautiful until you remembered how they felt. He didn't cry. Not because he felt nothing, but because everything had been tangled up long ago. His grandmother raised him for a few years after the worst of it. She gave him a room, a roof, and a kind of distant kindness he hadn't known how to name. But she also kept him in a house that creaked, even when it wasn't windy. A house where the shadows stayed longer than they should. Cottonwood Grove. Even the name sounded haunted. At the attorney's office, the reading took place in a dim conference room that smelled of old paper and lemon cleaner. The other relatives looked over at Hunter without speaking, as if confused by his presence. The lawyer, Mr. Beecham, wore a suit too big at the shoulders and cleared his throat every other sentence like he might cough up something important. To my grandson, Hunter Reese Callahan, he read aloud, I leave Cottonwood Grove, in whole. No debts are to be passed. No mortgage remains. He will be its sole caretaker. Beecham paused and looked up, maybe expecting gratitude. Hunter blinked, expression blank. There's more, the lawyer added, eyes dropping back to the will. The property is not to be sold for a period of 5 years following my passing, under any condition. The cousins across the table shifted in their seats. One of them, Janice maybe, clicked her tongue. Hunter sat still, chest tight, fingers curling around the arms of the chair. He hadn't asked for this. Not the land, not the isolation, and definitely not the house. He'd grown up trying to escape it, first in thought, then in distance. And now, here it was again, in his name, a gift wrapped in obligation. Later that evening, the sun hung low and wide over the woods, casting golden light through the cottonwood trees that lined the gravel road. The seeds floated like ash, coating the windshield of his car. They got caught in his hair, clung to his sleeves. His throat burned. He sneezed once, then twice. The allergy had been with him since childhood. A curse, his grandmother called it. A sensitivity, his doctor said. Either way, he always knew the season by the burning of his eyes. The house appeared in the clearing like it always had. 3 stories, wood siding worn gray, windows like half-lidded eyes. The porch sagged slightly to the left. One shutter hung loose. It looked unchanged, untouched by the years, but also unwelcoming. Something in its stillness unsettled him. He didn't go inside right away. Instead, he walked the perimeter, noting broken steps, vines climbing the gutters, a bird's nest tucked in the porch rafters. The place felt paused, not abandoned. He used to see someone here. He wasn't sure if it had been real. A young man, maybe a little older than him, standing in the upstairs window or walking the hallway. Always silent, always watching. Once, Hunter swore he saw him in the mirror, standing behind him while he brushed his teeth. His grandmother dismissed it. This house plays tricks, she'd said, and went back to folding laundry. That night, sleep came slow. Dreams pressed in. When the world inside his head finally formed, he found himself standing in the front yard of Cottonwood Grove, but it wasn't the one he'd seen earlier. This version gleamed. Porch rails stood straight, white paint unchipped. The garden bloomed with wildflowers. Lamps glowed from every room. He stepped forward. The door opened before he touched it. Music drifted through the air, soft jazz on a phonograph. He entered the house. The wallpaper looked fresh. The floors shone. And in the parlor stood a young man with dark waved hair and suspenders over a linen shirt. His hands were tucked behind his back. He smiled like he'd been waiting. Hunter, the man said, voice low and familiar. Hunter opened his mouth, but no sound came. I thought you might come back, the man said, stepping forward. You always said you would. Hunter shook his head slowly. Who are you? The man tilted his head, eyes bright with something between grief and warmth. Silas Quinn, he said, as if the name should mean something, as if it already did. The dreams deepened without permission. Hunter noticed it first, in the quiet way they bled into morning, how the air inside Cottonwood Grove held on to the last note of a dream long after he opened his eyes. Some mornings, the light filtering through his window looked filtered through gauze, like the sky itself had taken on the weight of memory. The kind of mornings where the clocks ticked too loud, and the air smelled faintly of lilac water and something older, pipe smoke, salt sweat, old linen. At night, Silas was waiting, always in the same place, sometimes on the porch, sometimes in the sunroom, once sitting on the piano bench with his sleeves rolled to his elbows. His smile never faded all the way. It hovered, hesitant, like he was afraid to hope. Hunter walked with him through the house, through doors he never remembered unlocking. He touched the railings, the wallpaper, the cool porcelain basin in the upstairs washroom, and every inch felt more real than anything outside. Silas brushed against him in passing, a fingertip against a sleeve, the warmth of a palm grazing his lower back when the wind caught a door, and Hunter flinched the first time, not from fear, but from surprise. The dreams carried heat, breath, the scent of starch and soap on skin. No dream had ever let him feel before. The conversation started small. Names of flowers, recipes, stories of house guests, long gone. Silas spoke in a voice that didn't match the photographs. Low, elegant, modern in places, but always with an edge of something else. He never spoke of death. He avoided questions with the grace of someone long practiced in deflection. When asked directly who he was, Silas smiled like he was about to answer, and then changed the subject. You knew this place once, Silas said one night, standing beneath the cottonwoods as their fluff caught the wind. Not in your body, but somewhere else. Doesn't it feel familiar? Hunter hesitated. It did. It had for days. Even the smallest things, the sound of the wind through the attic vent, the soft whistle of the kettle from the back kitchen, felt rooted deeper than memory. In the waking hours, the house no longer seemed abandoned. Not quite. The rooms remained dim, but not dead. Doors opened on their own. The grandfather clock ticked again, though no one had touched its weights. On the third morning, Hunter found footprints, damp, narrow, leading from the back door to the upstairs hall. His own shoes, left muddy by the side of his bed. He didn't remember going outside. He stopped sneezing. The allergies that had defined his childhood summers disappeared without fanfare. He walked through falling cotton without so much as a sniffle. His eyes no longer itched. When he stood beneath the trees, arms crossed, watching the white drift from the branches like snow, he no longer felt assaulted. He felt invited. The shift unnerved him more than it comforted. The body keeps score, he'd once read, and something in his kept telling him this wasn't healing. This was replacement. One afternoon, while rummaging through the back of a hallway closet, he found a small wooden box, hinged, unmarked, almost weightless. Inside, a bundle of letters tied in a green ribbon, all dated from 1924 to early 1925. Most were signed by Silas Quinn. Neat handwriting, faintly slanted. The tone of the letters varied, some playful, some melancholy, but all threaded with affection. Not a single envelope was sealed, and not a single letter was ever sent. The recipient's name appeared midway through the second letter. Thomas. Further reading filled in the rest. Thomas Delaney, son of Mayor James Delaney, heir to Delaney Cotton and Freight, one of the largest landowners in the county's history. In the final letter, Silas wrote. We make shadows behind curtains, but I want light. I want a morning where I can hold your hand without flinching. You say it's impossible, but I think you're afraid, and I think you don't love me the way I love you. I wish I could hate you for that. Hunter didn't move for a long time. He read the line again and again, then tucked the letters back into the box and slid it under the bed. He wasn't surprised Silas never sent them. The time they came from wasn't a great environment for people like Silas, for people like Hunter. That night, he found Silas by the fireplace, reading from a book that hadn't been there the night before. The same green ribbon marked a page. When Hunter sat beside him, Silas closed the book and said nothing. Their shoulders brushed. Neither pulled away. Hunter wanted to ask the question, wanted to name Thomas out loud, to watch Silas react, to see if ghosts could grieve in real time, but the words lodged in his throat. So instead, they sat. The flames danced low, casting long shapes across the rug, and the house outside the dream slept without a sound. The library smelled like mildew and waxed tile. Fluorescence flickered above long rows of forgotten history, the kind people called heritage when they wanted to feel proud, and past when they didn't. Hunter flipped through brittle pages, one after another, until the black ink blurred into gray. Silas Quinn. Died June 21st, 1925. No obituary. No surviving family. A single line in the Eagle Bend Gazette called it a tragedy. Young man found hanged on Cottonwood Grove property. Suicide suspected. Private funeral held. Nothing about a scandal. No details. No note. No theory. Just a clean-cut ending, thin as newsprint. But when he spoke to a town clerk, an older woman named Marie, she squinted at him like she'd been waiting decades for someone to ask. People didn't speak of it after, she said, rubbing her thumbnail along a coffee mug rim. My daddy said his granddaddy said there was blood on the floorboards. Said the undertaker looked white as bone when he came back. You don't get a jaw bruise from hanging. Hunter leaned forward. What kind of bruise? Fist, probably. Maybe elbow. Knocked crooked. I don't know. She sighed, eyes drifting to the window. They all wanted it to go away. The more he dug, the stranger the silences became. One police report had been removed entirely from the town archives. The coroner's original notes were missing, according to the record's custodian. A penciled margin note in a librarian's logbook from 1947 mentioned a pocket watch belonging to Silas Quinn, recovered near the edge of the property line, buried under 2 inches of soil. The record didn't explain who found it or how they knew it was his. Hunter stared at the words for a long time. A pocket watch. Missing for over 20 years. Discovered buried. Not lost. Hidden. He returned to the house that evening with dirt under his fingernails and anger roiling low in his chest. The sun dipped behind the cottonwoods, and the sky filled with white. Cotton drifted past the eaves in slow spirals. He breathed it in without so much as a tickle. Sleep came with night. When the dream formed, the house stood lit from within, as always. The walls carried music, and Silas stood by the fireplace, shirt sleeves rolled, thumb grazing the edge of a book. His eyes brightened when he saw Hunter, but the smile didn't follow. You've been busy, Silas said. Hunter didn't sit. Tell me what happened. Silas tilted his head, face unreadable. You already know. I want to hear it from you. A long pause. The fire crackled, muted. Silas closed the book and set it on the mantel. His fingers lingered on the cover before dropping to his sides. We loved in the dark, he said, voice soft. That was the arrangement? I wanted something else. I said I wouldn't keep hiding. I told him I'd walk into the mayor's garden in daylight and kiss him in front of God and God's lawn boy, if it came to that. A dry laugh. He didn't take it well. Hunter moved closer. The fire's light carved soft gold into Silas's jaw. He didn't flinch. Thomas Delaney killed me, Silas said. In this house, not far from where you sleep. One blow to the jaw, then a rope around the neck. Told them I hung myself before anyone came, and people believed it, or pretended to. His voice didn't waver, but his hands clenched briefly, then opened again. Hunter's throat ached. He tried to speak, but Silas met his eyes first. "What kind of man am I?" Silas said. "If a part of me still loves him." Silence bloomed between them. Hunter looked at the man in front of him, the man he'd grown to want, to ache for in waking hours, and saw not a ghost, but a wound still open. He couldn't answer the question. He didn't try. The next morning, Hunter stood in front of the county courthouse with the historian who had once called Silas Quinn an unfortunate boy. Hunter showed her the letters, the bruising, the buried watch. He didn't plead. He stated. It took weeks. He filled out paperwork, sat through meetings, endured rolled eyes and measured doubt. He didn't care. He wouldn't let the town call it a suicide again. Eventually, the record was amended. One line changed. Cause of death, homicide. Hunter left the courthouse alone. Cotton floated past the steps like soft ghosts. That night, in the dream, the house was quiet. Silas sat on the porch swing, not smiling, not sad, just waiting. Hunter sat beside him without a word. Silas reached for his hand, and Hunter didn't let go. The world outside Cottonwood Grove dimmed. Hunter stopped returning calls. Messages stacked up in his inbox. Old friends from college, a cousin in Biloxi, someone from the temp agency offering work at a warehouse. But he couldn't bring himself to reply. The thought of standing under fluorescent lights, hauling boxes, clocking hours, seemed distant and absurd, like asking a man to shovel snow from a field of cotton in July. Bills clustered on the dining table. Property tax, electric, water. The kind of things his grandmother had handled with careful precision, now unpaid and printed in red. He moved the envelopes into a drawer. Out of sight didn't erase them, but it made them quieter. When he went into town for groceries, people looked at him with vague recognition. He kept his hood up and moved quickly. Once, in the pharmacy parking lot, an older woman called his name. He ducked away as fast as he could. Each night, the dreams returned. He and Silas stood in rooms that had never existed during the day. A second ballroom opened behind the study. The walls wore deep velvet and gold leaf. Candles flickered in holders shaped like crescent moons. Music played from a gramophone with no crank, and Hunter recognized the tune, though he couldn't name it. Silas danced like someone who remembered every step and still delighted in improvising. He held Hunter close when they turned, fingers interlaced at the small of his back, breath close to his ear. They read together on the veranda. Wilde, Baldwin, Dickinson. Silas preferred the poetry, sometimes reading aloud in a voice that seemed impossibly current and far away all at once. Hunter listened without speaking. The starlight in these dreams pooled on the floor like water. The cottonwoods bloomed above them endlessly, snowing light even in night. No one knew him like Silas did. No one had touched his shoulder and meant it. No one had asked how he felt and waited for the full answer. And no one outside the house had any idea it was happening. By day, Hunter moved through his routines on autopilot. He forgot to eat until late. Laundry remained in the basket, clean but unfolded. He avoided mirrors. His eyes looked sunken, his cheekbones sharpened. But in dreams, he looked whole. One evening, with the last of the grocery money gone and the fridge nearly empty, Hunter sat on the floor of the back hallway, back pressed to the wall, knees bent. He pressed his palms against his face. The wood beneath him felt colder than it should. He realized the house had stopped trying to warm itself when he was awake. That night, Silas found him in the sunroom. The windows were open. The cotton drifted lazily outside. Hunter said nothing at first. He walked over, picked up a glass of something cool and sweet, tea maybe, and drank without tasting. Then he asked, "Now that it's over, now that people know what happened to you, are you ready to move on?" Silas's expression didn't change. He watched Hunter for a long time, then stood and walked to the window. His reflection shimmered faintly against the glass, not quite solid. I have nowhere else to be, Silas said. Do you? The question didn't land like a hook. It wasn't meant to pull him closer. It only sat there, humming in the space between them. Hunter looked at his hands. The dream version of them bore no scars. They were clean hands, unburdened. He crossed the room and joined Silas at the window. Outside, the cottonwood trees danced in the moonlight. The same ones that gave him rashes as a child now glittered with something close to grace. Hunter leaned his shoulder against Silas's. No words, no need. The real world might be unraveling, but here it had never been more still. By mid-July, the rumors started. It began at the diner. Someone said they'd driven past Cottonwood Grove and seen Hunter standing barefoot in the yard at dusk, his face turned up to the sky, like he was waiting for something no one else could see. Someone else mentioned he hadn't been to town in a couple weeks, hadn't paid his water bill, hadn't answered texts. The story curved into gossip, then concern, then something sharper. That house has taken him, a man said flatly one morning over coffee. It always takes someone. They meant the way places sometimes fold people into themselves, like ivy swallowing brick. Cottonwood Grove, with its soft decay and too many windows, with its blooming trees and aching past. One afternoon, Lee, a friend from college who used to stay up late writing music with Hunter on his living room floor, drove 2 hours from Tupelo and knocked on the front door. Hunter answered slowly. His shirt hung off his shoulders, too loose at the neck. His collarbones stood out like thin ledges under the skin. Dark curls stuck to his forehead, and his fingers trembled slightly when he motioned for Lee to come in. The inside of the house was strange. Not ruined, not filthy, no trash, no smell. But dust coated everything, and the air felt thick, like time pooled instead of moved. Half the lights didn't work. A stack of dishes sat in the sink. A single record player spun in the corner, though no music played. Lee stared at him. Hunter, what's going on? Hunter blinked slowly. I'm okay, he said. I've never been happier. You look like you've been living off air. I am, in a way. Lee ran a hand through his hair and looked around. You need help. Hunter gave a quiet laugh. Not cruel, not mocking, but far away. I already have it. That night, the dream returned, as it always did. The house came alive in ways the waking world never could. Candles lit themselves. Flowers climbed the stairwell railings. Silas sat at the piano, fingers drifting across the keys with no pressure, yet music still rose, soft and aching. Hunter sat on the bench beside him. Their arms touched. I thought, Silas said, not turning away from the keys, you might try to fix me. Hunter didn't speak right away. He listened to the melody for a while, let it move through him. I'm not here to fix anything, he said at last. I only want to stay. Silas stopped playing. The quiet that followed felt deep, like water under ice. You're still alive, he said softly. Hunter smiled, faint and tired. Out there, maybe, but this is more real than anything out there. They moved to the porch. The sky above the cottonwoods had darkened into its familiar dream violet. The wind was gentle. Cotton drifted through the air like memory. Silas leaned back on the swing, arms stretched along the backrest. Hunter sat beside him and let the silence hold them. He no longer remembered what day it was. The calendar meant nothing here. Time folded like a letter never sent. He didn't miss the noise of life, the clocks, the appointments, the weight of needing to explain himself. Here, he didn't need to account for anything. Not his grief, not his body, not his loneliness. The house didn't ask him to be better. It only asked him to be still. They watched the cotton fall, slowly, endlessly. like snow in a season where it had no business existing. It layered the steps, caught in Silas's dark curls, clung to the hem of Hunter's shirt. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Seasons shifted around Cottonwood Grove, but time inside it held a different rhythm. The lawn grew wild, swallowing the gravel drive. Ivy curled up the porch columns, dragging them slowly into green silence. Shingles slipped loose from the roof like old teeth. Window panes yellowed. The town stopped asking when the house would be sold, repaired, condemned. Hunter stayed. No one knew how he managed. The power cut off one winter, but then returned weeks later without explanation. The water shut down, and then came back, then stopped again. Mail no longer arrived. Yet sometimes, late at night, someone driving the back road would see a light flickering behind the parlor curtains. Once, a delivery driver left a parcel on the front step. No name, no return address. The box disappeared by morning. At dusk, locals sometimes spotted a figure in the field behind the house, barefoot in the cotton drift, moving slowly through the knee-high grass. Slim, hair longer now, his head bowed slightly, lips moving, always talking, to someone invisible. The stories varied. Some said he'd been driven mad by grief. Others whispered about a curse, an inheritance that had turned on its heir. A few said the ghost inside the house had never left, and neither had the boy who once saw him. Hunter no longer corrected the stories. He never went into town. The house didn't need the outside world anymore. Inside, the furniture had faded into soft gray tones. Dust thickened and then vanished. The floorboards no longer creaked. They breathed. Each night, Silas waited. The dreams never blurred. The colors stayed sharp. Candlelight glowed in golden pools. Music still drifted through closed doors. Silas never aged, and Hunter never asked why. Hunter felt no urgency anymore. No calendar loomed. No future had to be arranged. He folded deeper into the rhythm of the place. Some mornings, he woke with his cheek pressed to a cold pillow and lay still, waiting for sleep to take him again. Other mornings, he wandered the house with a quiet sort of reverence, touching old wood and brass fixtures as though blessing them. He spoke less and less, out loud. He no longer wrote in his notebook. The language he shared with Silas had turned into gestures, glances, shared stillness. There was no dramatic ending, no intervention, no cleansing. Only quiet. One evening, the sky softened into pink and cotton again. A wind rose gently through the grove. Summer snow lifted and spun around the house, settling on the windowsills and in the branches, though no one else in the region reported such weather. Hunter lay in bed, beneath a thin quilt. The bedroom no longer looked modern in any sense. No clocks, no wires, no signs of the world outside. His eyes remained open. He watched the ceiling. He breathed slowly, as if time itself moved through him. His lips parted slightly, a faint smile curving. His hands lay still on his chest. He did not blink. In the dream, the house shone. All the lights were lit. The gramophone played a waltz. Candles burned in every window. Silas stood barefoot on the stairs, wearing a soft linen shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked down at Hunter, not with sorrow, but with welcome. He reached out his hand. Hunter took it. They stepped outside, onto the porch. Silas turned to him, voice clear, steady, unburdened. "Let it snow," he said. And it did, because Silas knew what Hunter knew. This time summer would last forever, and Hunter would never leave his side again.
Please make sure you are subscribed and be one of the strange.